You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Brie and Thais, episode number 10. Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Brie Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
a movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
Because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Hello, hello.
Hey Amplifiers, happy Monday.
Happy Monday. We are sitting in my closet. Our podcast studio. And we are so excited for the interview that we got coming up for you guys with Sabrina Dax.
Oh my God, she's amazing.
She's amazing. And the conversation that inspired in that interview is something that I think everybody needs to hear times a bazillion million. So we're going to elaborate a little bit more now, and then we're going to bring her on, and it's going to be pretty magical. But before we do, let's read a review that we've received.
We love love, and we love to share love, and we love Jenna, and we loved this review. So Jenna said, I absolutely love this podcast. On their own, Brie and Thais are two of the most brilliant, loving, and entertaining women I know. Couple that with the incredible guests they've brought onto their podcast, and you have episodes brimming with inspiring truths and incredible insights. I listened to the first 3 episodes in one afternoon because I just couldn't get enough.
Thank you, Jenna. You're amazing.
Thanks,
and
Jenna.
We love reading reviews on air. So go fucking leave us a review. And we would, 1, love you forever. And 2, we'll read it on there. And we just love the community that we're building through this podcast, and love the events that we're building here in LA. We have some really great events coming up. We always do, for our Coterie members, our membership group that we have, as well as for open to the public. And you can check them all out on our events page of our website. So just go to theamplifycollective.com, go to the events tab, and you'll find all up and coming things Amplify.
Oh, and I think that it actually kind of lends really well to the conversation we're having, because what we're doing with our community is really building in-person connections. And I think that's very similar to what we're going to be diving into here, huh?
Yeah. So let's get right in. Talking about connections today, and what does it mean to build long-lasting, authentic connections, especially in the digital world, where we are so connected to our phones and we are so connected to social media. How do we make sure that we are not removing the in-person element into our lives? Brie and I have done so much research on depression and loneliness, and studies are showing that disconnecting yourself from in-person connections leads to devastating effects on your body, mind, and spirit.
I even read a study that talked about how it actually, lack of in-person connection and lack of in-person community actually changes human beings on a cellular level. Like, it actually changes the human genome in not very good ways.
Yeah. And again, we're not dissing
we love
social media, and
we love social media.
Yeah. And the internet and computers and phones. Quite frankly, I think we live in a pretty divine age. We're becoming more and more conscious, and we're able to use these portals to connect us to in bigger and better ways. And we've had a whole podcast conversation about the internet and the use of social media. So there are ways that we can use social media in a very conscious way. But today we really want to focus on, all right, so we have amazing tools at our disposal. How can we use them to create real connections, and connections that lead you to feeling really seen and really heard and really supported? And one of the things, Brie, that I watched a documentary this past weekend called Misrepresentation. I've
heard good things about that one.
Highly recommend it. I was Snapchatting like every 2 seconds, like a whole video on it, like whole little 10-second snippets of the documentary, because I just loved it so much. And it's all about women and how they're portrayed in the media, and how these big media tycoons basically get to develop our culture. These big 5 conglomerate media companies are basically telling us how we should expect each other to behave. And the reality TV show is one of the worst ways for women to be represented. And one of the commentators was like, I believe it's actually a cultural backlash against women's rights. That's television and these reality TVs, because they portray women so negatively. And it's simply not true, and it's simply not what we're seeing. Of course it's not true, and Brie and I take a stand for that. We believe that women are actually really, really supportive and amazing and nurturing and really amazing friends. And so to begin the conversation, I just want to make sure that we're clearing the slate a little bit. Women are not catty, bitchy, manipulative, vindictive. All of these personality traits do not encompass all of women. Certainly, we have exhibited certain personality traits because we're human.
Well, and I think that those are learned personality traits.
Exactly, but they're not inherent in women.
I don't think that they're natural personality traits. I think they're things that we're taught and things that we take on because we think that's how it's done. We think that's how it's supposed to be. And the reality is that it's not true. And more women are now taking a stand against that and really stepping into the fact that we're actually nurturers and we're actually supportive of one another, and we're not lessened or diminished or harmed in any way by coming into community with other women.
Exactly. And so make sure that, you really take a check on yourself about your stories that you have created about being in sisterhood and having women friends. And to be honest, that was a story that I carried through much of high school and college, where I had girlfriends, of course, but I preferred guy friends because I had this serious story that girls only care about shopping and gossip. And because I wasn't into either of those two things, men friends and guy friends were better for me. It took an evolution of the soul for me to realize that that's actually just a story that I was carrying. It's not true of all women. And of course, there are some women who are catty and blah, 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 but that is not true of all of us. And when I realized that that was a story I was carrying, I choose to find women who actually had similar interests to me. And that's when I started getting into yoga, and I was finding community in the yoga world, and I was finding friends that, guess what, weren't catty and liked shopping, but not to the extreme that I thought all women liked shopping.
Well, and I think part of that too lends towards my belief that human beings are self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah.
And if that's what you believe women are, those are the kind of women that are going to come into your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it really takes a conscious choice to decide that you want something different in your life. You want truly supportive, collaborative, community of women in your life, that you will start attracting a different kind of person in your life.
And that's what I found.
Yeah. And I would say that one of the first steps for people, especially if you're one, I don't watch TV. I haven't owned a television in 7 or 8 years. But if you're one that watches television, I would challenge you to start looking at how women are being portrayed in the media. Like, where are the beliefs that you have around community and around women connecting coming from? And how are they portrayed? And is that something that you wish to continue to perpetuate in your life or not? But I think the first step is awareness and really getting clear on what you're seeing and what's contributing to the beliefs that you have.
And I have something really great to add here. So misrepresentation, seriously, guys, it's in our show notes. You have to watch it. It's on Netflix. It's really brilliant. And it talks about how the continual decision to objectify women's bodies is the reason why there are less women in politics. Because when you believe that you are your body, and when you believe that your worth and who you are comes from the validation of how your body looks, you're less likely to become a leader, and you're less likely to take yourself seriously. And I love that so, so much, because when we buy tabloid magazines and we watch these reality TV shows and we buy the music that elicits women to be objectified, we are perpetuating and giving money to hindering our own progress as leaders. And so we want you to start being more mindful around how are you spending your time? How are you spending your money? Women make up 80%, I think is the statistic, of the purchasing power in this country. And yet we comprise only 17% of Congress. And yet we are only in like 20 of the top Fortune 500 companies as CEOs. I mean, we are really holding ourselves back by perpetuating these awful stigmas about women. It's time for us to take a stand for something different. And it can start with us. Like, here on earth. It doesn't have to be Hillary Clinton or some high level powerful politician to change the way we have this conversation. It starts with us deciding not to perpetuate these thoughts and beliefs. And one of the reasons too, I can talk forever about this documentary, but one of the things too is that, so Hillary Clinton and Sarah Palin were two women who ran last election cycle, and Hillary Clinton was seen as masculine, and so she was criticized for looking masculine and being masculine and dressing masculine. Sarah Palin was looked at as feminine, and so she was judged as being sexy and men wanting to fuck her, and all these really bad conversations about using her as for her beauty and being a ditz. Now, whether you have an opinion about Hillary Clinton or Sarah Palin is not relevant here. The point is, I would be terrified to run for office if that's the type of behavior I would receive, that type of judgment. And that's not only part of society that we feel like we have to objectify women by commenting on their dress. Women are the worst ones. We criticize other women worse than men criticize us. We have to fucking stop that. We have to stop it.
Yeah, Tice and I will be doing an entire podcast dedicated to what it looks like, for us to be in partnership as women. But this is a really good conversation to start on an individual level. Where can you take responsibility for supporting the women in the world, even if they're women you don't know? Looking at another woman and judging her at the grocery store, or picking up, like Tice said, a tabloid, or focusing on what Michelle Obama's wearing versus the change she's making in the world.
Yeah.
Like, these are really truly conversations that need to start with each of us on an individual level, because that's truly the only way that we are going to be able to come together within this powerful community and truly change things for ourselves. It's time to stop talking about what's wrong in the world, and it's time to start taking responsibility for what can I do and who can I be in the world in order to shift the needle in this conversation.
Amen, Brie. Amen.
I don't know where all that just came from, but it's cool. We're just going to go with it.
Yeah, this is so, look at this. There's a woman I know, and she was doing a 3-day challenge for being on video, okay? And she's a motivational speaker, and she's teaching women how to empower themselves around being seen, similar to the work that I do. So she's a quote unquote a competitor, but I actually adore her and I don't see her as competition. Brie and I have talked about this endlessly.
And that will be part of the podcast coming up as well. That's just us.
Yeah. However, putting that aside, I was watching her video enticing people to come into her 3-day challenge, and she was wearing bright pink lipstick. Okay, like bright pink lipstick. And I was like, rock fucking on, sister, for being able to rock on such bright lipstick. One of the women who commented was like, your lipstick is such a turnoff, and I would never hire you to be my speaker coach because of your lack of professionality around how you dress.
Seriously?
She wrote that. She wrote that as a comment, and this woman responded very kindly. She didn't respond back, but still, holy fuck, women, is this what we're doing to ourselves? This woman is putting herself out there in such a big badass way, inspiring women to be seen and to be heard, and you're gonna have the audacity to tell her that her lipstick turns you off? To me, that's just mind-blowing, and that is what we need to really take a stand to stopping. Whether it's, by not writing these things, because it's not necessary to put such negativity out into the world, but also really being mindful of when those thoughts come up for you. If you're walking down the grocery store and you see a mother and a crying child, and the mother is dressed all sloppy, instead of judging her, why don't you send her compassion for being a mother and handling, a child that is so difficult to do. Maybe she's a single mom, maybe she's poor and has no, we just don't know their story. And when we judge them immediately by what they're wearing or how they're dressed, we diminish their value in the world, and therefore we diminish our value in the world, and we put ourselves out there less because we're afraid of other people's judgments because of our own judgments.
Yeah. So yeah, really bringing it back down to community and connection, you don't know what anyone's going through. You really don't. And what if, instead of judging that person, you could smile at them and, like Tice said, send them compassion? What kind of impact would you have on their day? And what kind of impact would their response have on your day?
Yeah.
And imagine the spiral that could happen in terms of, uplifting other women. I mean, it's just really powerful. And I think we look at this issue as such a big issue of like, well, who's going to fix it? It starts with each of us individually before we can take it on a global scale. And so, like I said earlier, take responsibility for it. How can you show up as a better woman within your community? And how can that then trickle down to the other women in your community? I think it's such, a powerful conversation. I know we'll be talking more about it with Sabrina because she's in PR,
Yeah.
which is all about who you know,
Yeah.
the connections you have, forming relationships, forming bonds, like really getting to know people.
Yeah,
And
she's amazing.
yeah, it's a really powerful conversation, and I think that it's not had enough. I think people don't get challenged enough to take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
We like to look at the media and say shame on you, but how are we perpetuating it?
Well, and remember, the media conglomerates, they put things on TV because of what money they will make from it.
And because people keep watching it.
Exactly. It's a capitalist society, which means that we actually have the power. If we stop watching it, if we stop perpetuating it and putting our attention onto it, they're going to have to change their focus. And really, one of the things that call the actions of misrepresentation is to support women-owned networks, support women-owned television shows or not women-owned, but women lead. Support movies that are women lead, that have a women lead. Because the numbers are also very sad for how many women's stories are represented in the world. And one of the things that I've personally have decided that I want to do through my business is to support Women Rise. And the way Amplify does it is by bringing women together. And we see the power in connections and in using online tools for in-person connections. And so, Brie, I have an idea. Why don't we go back and forth and share some no-nos, what not to do when it comes to making authentic connections?
Okay.
All right, here's the number one. Are you ready for number one?
Sure.
I know that this is one of Brie's biggest pet peeves. Number one, if you meet someone in person and you exchange business cards, do not go home and then add such person's email to your list.
Or your Facebook groups, or all of your things.
Don't do it. Don't do it. That's not being authentic. That's not being in connection. That's coming from a place of lack where you believe that the only way that person's going to be interested in your service is by just adding them without their permission. Now, of course, if you say, hey, I have this great thingy, would you mind if I added you on it? I know you're going to love it. And they give you their email and they say yes, then of course, by all means. But if you don't have their permission, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I actually, truth be told, have completely removed my email address from my business card. I have zero contact information on my business card because I got so sick of people just adding me. I just unsubscribed to another one. She friended me on LinkedIn and got my email from LinkedIn and then added me to her email list. Yeah.
She did not do that.
It said on there, because we've connected on LinkedIn, you are now a part of my email list.
That's the worst possible thing in the whole entire world.
I unsubscribed from it immediately and wrote a note that said, I did not give you my permission to do this. I just had another company add a profile for me. It was a fashion company. Oh, hey, just wanted to let you know, here's your login information for your profile on our site. And I emailed them back and I was like, absolutely inappropriate and actually against the law.
Yeah.
So
this stuff we're not just saying it because it's like fun facts. It's literally against the law, and people can hold you can hold you to the law if you add, people's emails. Just don't do it. Don't do it unless they've opted in, unless they've said permission. Don't add you to their list. It's rude. It's not nice.
It's so skeezy.
It's just skeezy, and that's not.
Honestly, I'm the type of person, like, if you add me to your list without my permission, I will purposefully never do business with you. Like, even if I need your business, I will find someone else that does what you do and I will hire them. I am absolutely against. There was someone this weekend that text messaged me about voting. And I responded that I purposefully would not be voting for him because he had violated my privacy by text messaging me on a Saturday afternoon.
Well, you shouldn't be voting for Trump anyway. Just teasing. Just kidding. Anyway, let's. All right. So the whole point is, if you want to create authentic connections, really make sure that the actions that you're taking with people's personal information is held in a very delicate manner. These are people's numbers. They're people's emails. These are portals into people's lives. You don't want to be using it for your skeevy, lazy, vindictive. I know we're putting a lot of labels on this action, but really just don't do it. Anyway, what's your pet peeve, Brie?
My pet peeve is people that lead with sales. And you know that, I mean, if you've listened to any of our other podcasts, this is something we're adamant about, is don't lead with your what. No one gives a shit what you do. No one.
No.
If you're looking to build community with someone, don't send them your MLM stuff. Like, don't ask them to buy your body wraps or your oils or your thises or your that's. Like, fucking get to know them.
Yeah. You can't assume that what people's needs are. You can't assume that they're going to want your thing.
Like, the people that message me and are like, oh, you should buy my body wraps. I always want to email them back and be like, are you calling me fat? Seriously, like, how dare you think that you know what I need and try to just push your product on me without knowing anything about me? And don't email me. This is another one. Don't email me like we're BFFs if you've never spoken to me before.
Yeah.
If we're friends on Facebook, that does not equal us being BFFs and you being able to send me like a hey girl email. like I don't know. Connection is absolutely one of my soapboxes.
Yeah, and we just want to make sure that the message that we're giving to you is this.
There's a better way to do it.
There's a better way of doing it. There is a way that can feel really good, because I know that it probably doesn't feel good for those people sending those messages either. They just feel like they have to do it because they feel like that's the way to do business. It's not. There is a better way. And one of the things that we always talk about is start with why, or start with what you're passionate about or what you're excited about, or simply ask questions. People love to talk about themselves. The more you ask them questions and you get them talking about whatever they're passionate about, they're more likely to find trust in you. It's a psychological thing. It works. So this is not manipulative tools for you to get people to like you. It's simply what happens when you give interest to what other people are wanting and listening to them and seeing how you can be of service to them. That's a true leader. That's being an empowered woman, right? Instead of coming from the place of business, and then sale, business card, buy my shit, business card. There's a better way to do it. And all right, so one of the things that I would offer is to really make sure that you are not using social media as simply a tool to sell your stuff. And so what I mean by that is I will connect with you on Facebook, and then you automatically send me a message, like Bree said, selling your stuff. And then all you do is post on social media about your stuff. And then you push me to like your Facebook page about your stuff. And then you add me into your Facebook group about your stuff. And it's just all about you, and selling. And I don't have, you haven't given me a reason to listen to you. You haven't given me a reason why you're even connecting with me. And so one of the rules that I have for myself is if I'm having a friend request and I don't know you and I've never met you, odds are I'm not going to accept it. Not because I don't want to connect, but because there's only a certain number of friends that we can have on Facebook. And I want to reserve that space for people I've actually connect with in person. And so if you're Facebook friending someone that you don't know and you've never connected with them, I'm not saying that that's not cool. You can certainly do that, but then send them a message and just say, hey, I'm so glad that we connected. I found you through this and you just look so exciting. Like, I love what you're doing in the world. Would you be interested in having a 30-minute conversation with me and getting to know each other better? Not so that I can sell you my shit. Just an authentic 30-minute conversation. And when I used to do this, I got almost like a 90% yes rate. Because women longing for connection and to support one another.
One of my favorite resources in terms of what Thais was just talking about is a great book, super easy read, called The Go Giver.
Oh, I love The Go Giver.
So I know that common terminology is the go getter, that you get. This book is all about how can you lead from a place of service instead of getting someone's business. How can you serve them first? Before you approach the business side of things. And it's a really powerful book. We actually have all of our interns reading it right now because we want to be of higher service to our community and our membership and all of those things. So how can we lead from a place of service so that we're giving them things before we ever expect them to want to do business with us?
I'm reading a book called Vironomics. This is a book that Brie recommended to me, and it's a pretty good read. It's also very easy. And one of the things that he says is have people owe you more than you owe people. And by that, he means give out favors. If someone is posting in their Facebook about a book that they just launched, share it for them. Just share it. I mean, these little things, like, people will, not that people feel like they owe you, but you're basically giving karma points out there. And you're likely going to receive karma points back. That's just the way it is. But come from the place of, how can I share people's stuff? How can I congratulate them, or share, or connect people together? And how can I add more value to the world? And you'll be amazed at the increase in revenue you find, the increase in friendships and authentic connections, and opportunities that you may never have thought you would have gotten. And you certainly probably wouldn't have gotten if you asked for it, or if you pushed your way through it, or if you tried to sell yourself.
Yeah.
Connections is good. It's a good conversation. And, we like to get into our soapbox because we definitely think that some of the ways that it's being done right now is just not the best way. And that's why we so take a stand for in-person connections. And, one of the best ways to create in-person connections is to make an effort. Because if you don't make an effort, you're just always going to resort to your phone, right? It's like, that's our natural...
well, it's easy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's so easy to just text someone rather than call them. And then it's much easier to just text someone than to actually meet in person.
I had a PR contact call me a few weeks ago, and she said, "You know what I love about calling you?" I said, "What?" And she's like, "You're the only one that ever picks up your phone."
Yeah, Bree likes to be on the phone.
I am much more of a phone caller than I hate texting. I really hate texting.
See, I'm the opposite.
Drives me crazy.
I love texting. People will call me and I won't be doing anything, and I'll just see the phone ring.
Oh, I know, you do it to me all the time.
And then I'm like, I can just text this person. Like, what does she want? And it's so bad.
FaceTime Thais all the time, and she's like, nope, but she'll text me back right away.
So, I mean, sometimes I'm in the bathroom, Do we really want to be FaceTiming me in the bathroom? Anyway.
Oh, whatever.
So, this is actually one of the things that I'm working on, is getting on the phone more. And, I have so many amazing friends from college and from when I lived in New Jersey and from home. And, sad to say, some of those connections have withered because I haven't made the effort to stop using my thumbs and start using my mouth. And so I'm the first to admit it. Like, this is definitely something that I'm still working on. But come on, guys. Like, what's going to happen if we never connect with each other anymore? We're going to become like robots, like with our thumbs. We're going to get arthritis
zombies
on our thumbs because we're not actually connecting to people anymore.
I wrote a blog about this not too long ago about how the zombie apocalypse is actually happening right now. Like, people are just freaking zombies. They're not paying attention to what's going on outside of them. They're not engaging with life. They're just on their phones all the time or in front of the TV. And that connection thing is really, truly what differentiates us. And it's so, so, so important.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Is it time?
Is it time? Yeah, I think it's time to bring on Sabrina. I'm really, really excited about her as a guest, and I think you guys are going to love what she's up to in the world and how she's being a service and connecting with others around her. So let's get into it.
Let's do it. Welcome, Sabrina. I'm going to read a little bit about you so that everyone knows how amazing you are. Sabrina Dax is an independent publicist based in Seattle who leads publicity campaigns for entrepreneurs, authors, and thought leaders. She has a BA in English and European Studies from Brandeis University, a master's in European Literature from Oxford University, and she spent a year at Harvard University as a visiting fellow. She's also worked at the Harvard Center for European Studies in Berlin, where she managed and promoted the Berlin Dialogues, a speaker series featuring academics and experts from around the world. Wow, woman, I didn't even know half this stuff about you.
I know, that's what I was just thinking.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, ladies. It's really an honor.
Of course. So the first question that we like to ask every single one of our guests is, what does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
So I think for me, living an amplified life is about embracing connections between people and realizing that you can learn something from everybody you meet. And I literally mean everyone. It's amazing to me that people will, often not realize that the person you're sitting next to, whether you're in an airplane or in a Lyft or an Uber ride, that person could be, an amazing person to talk to and learn something from. So I think that's really the crux of what an amplified life is for me.
We're all about connection, so we are right there with you. So tell us more about like an amazing connection that you met from someone that was in an Uber or a Lyft or sitting next to you on a train or an airplane?
Oh my gosh, I have so many actually, but one in particular comes to mind. So I've been in Los Angeles since January. It's been almost 5 months, and I've loved every minute here. And this is such a car city, and people always say, oh, LA is such a car city, you don't get to talk to people. But I find that taking Lyft and Uber has really made the city feel much more of like a huge, big, friendly community. And I'll never forget this one time. It was actually my birthday, and I called a Lyft to go to the grocery store to pick up some food for this barbecue I was hosting. And my Lyft driver, his name was Leroy, he was very sweet and friendly. And I started asking him about his family and why he was living in LA. And he quickly, started telling me all about his daughter and his son. And he was like terrified that his daughter was going to get married. He was really upset about it. And then by the end of the ride, he was calling me his daughter. He's like, "Oh, you're my next daughter."
Aww.
And, so he was so sweet. And, it was a 30-minute ride. By the end of my ride there, he offered to help pick out my groceries. And then he was like, "We need to get you balloons because it's your birthday."
Aww.
So then we went to get balloons. And then we came back to my apartment. And I said, if you are free later, just stop by and, come join the barbecue. You're welcome to come. And lo and behold, a few hours later, he popped in. He didn't even stay to get any food. And he just dropped off a little birthday present for me. And it was so sweet. And, I just felt like, usually you could just go, hop in a Lyft and just say thank you. But if you take the time to ask people about their family and their lives, people respond to that. And, you can make amazing friends. And I would say like maybe 3 people at my birthday party at that evening were people I'd actually met either through a Lyft or Uber ride. So it was pretty fun.
That's amazing.
And so beautiful. And
so beautiful.
I feel like it just really speaks to your heart and your openness and just, clearly why we both connected with you and why we love you so much.
Amen.
Oh, well, the feeling is mutual, girls.
I actually... See, this is actually my challenge. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation where a lot of times I don't feel inspired to talk to strangers. I just, for whatever reason, get in my head and I just stop, and I'm just like listening to my iPhone or whatever. But I have to tell you, Sabrina, that the few times that I have engaged in conversation with complete strangers, I've always benefited from it and not necessarily gotten something like a physical thing out of it, but it has always made me feel more inspired and connected. And so I just love that you're introducing this conversation because I think that's in a world where we're so technologically addicted, it's so nice to hear that human connection is still very much important.
Yeah, I always tell people that strangers are, friends you just haven't met yet. Mm-hmm. And it has been really amazing being here because there are these wonderful opportunities to meet people. And going back to the Lyft story, there was this one woman who I met in a Lyft. She gave me a very quick ride from Hollywood up to Silver Lake. Koreatown to Silver Lake. And I randomly ran into her again like 2 weeks later at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. I was there for lunch. And we had talked about how she was writing a screenplay and we had connected over that. And then I was just like, "Hey, come to this opening that I'm hosting." As you know, I was working with the Rip Bodice here in LA and they had their launch party. And I just said, "Hey, come join us." And she really loved it. So I think that it is great to realize that no matter where you are, you can just be sitting in a lobby somewhere. And if you just take a few minutes to talk to someone, that person could be, someone you might actually run into again in the future too.
So I know you've lived all over the world and all over the United States. Is this something that has always been a practice for you, or is this something that you consciously have made a priority in your life?
It's not something that I ever did consciously. I've always loved talking to people and, connecting with people. I think that because I've moved, because I've lived in so many places, it's important to me when I get to a place to try to feel like it's home right away because I never know how long I'll be somewhere. And when I lived in Berlin, it was just for a year. I lived in New York for a couple of years. And because I've always known that, you never know how much time you have in one particular city, I try to make it feel as much as home as possible. And for me, that means, trying to create a community around me as quickly as possible because, I would love to be then when you go back to that city, you have friends there and people you can reach out to and stay in touch with. And it's really wonderful to see how people's lives then progress. And, you just have this long-term relationship. So it's never something I did consciously, but people would start asking me like, how do you meet people? How do you get to know so many people in such a short time? And I'm like, oh, I just want to talk to them and I want to learn a little bit from them. And, I think it is hard when you maybe are naturally a shyer, more introverted person. What people don't know about me is that everyone thinks like I'm a super extroverted person, which I am, but I'm actually much more of like a gregarious introvert than an extrovert. I really don't like, loud environments. I don't like crowds. I much prefer one-on-one time. So I think it's just if you, just even like a low level interaction, just like asking someone how their day is or, like what they're, how one of my favorite questions is like, how did you start doing what you do? How did you get into your field? People really like to talk about their work and their lives. And it's just a great way to, at least, start the connection.
I was actually going to ask you, what's a question that you found to be super effective? So thank you for answering it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think this is, I've known you, I think we got introduced about a year ago. Actually, pause, 2 years ago. Holy shit.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right? But we didn't actually meet until, I think about a year, 6 months ago. Anyways, one of the things that I think is the most beautiful about you, seeing you be in Los Angeles and seeing you come here in January and over the past 5 months, is that you really have built a community here in a very short amount of time. And you've gone out of your way to kind of experience Los Angeles to this like extreme level. I'm on your Instagram seeing all of the places that you visited, and there's so many that I'm like, God, I've lived here for 3 years and I still haven't seen half the shit that Sabrina's experienced in 5 months. And I think it's a really beautiful skill to have, or a beautiful intention to have, because, not everyone takes that initiative to kind of create that for themselves.
Totally.
Yeah, well, I thank you. And, I think that what you guys are doing is really wonderful because, you are helping people create a community for them. You're letting people in a very organic way connect with other wonderful people in the city and really make it feel more like home, because it can be daunting when you move somewhere and you don't know that many people. Where do you start? And I think it's great that now, there is this way through Amplify that you really find other like-minded individuals to hang out with and, make this city that's a little bit intimidating feel more friendly.
We're having fun.
Like a home for everyone. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting. When I was moving to LA, I had a girl message me who was really curious how, before I had even moved to LA, I had already created a community of people around me. And I found that if we can use social media to create offline relationships, it can actually be the best tool in our possession. The problem is, I think that most people lean too much on social media as the end to the means, like as a portal of connection, when really it creates more isolation. And that's what we found in our research, is that social media creates isolation unless you use it as a modality to create offline relationships.
Yeah, and I think that in addition to creating offline relationships, to recognize that a relationship can be 5 minutes, And when you meet someone in a grocery store and you buy something from them, that's a relationship, even if you just talk to them for 2 minutes. It's the way you look at them, or you ask them a question, or the way you receive something from them. It doesn't have to be just completely transactional. And I found that actually many of the things that have happened to me, it's because of these random encounters that just seemed completely serendipitous, but in the moment, they were actually like, oh, this is just 5 minutes, and this changed my life. And I can give you an example. When I started my book publicity career, I had worked in the nonprofit world earlier, and I was really looking to make a move, and I wanted to work in publishing, and I was trying to talk to as many people as possible and do a lot of informational interviews. And then I was at a wedding of my cousin, and I was running, the wedding started like exactly at 6 o'clock, and it was like 6:05, and I was like running into the venue, and there was this woman running next to me. We're both running in together, and we started a conversation. It turned out she worked in publishing too, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I'm looking for a job in publishing. I really want to move to New York." And she said, "Well, funny you should say that, because I just started an agency and I'm looking for a publicist." I didn't even know what a publicist was.
Oh my gosh.
And that was a completely random thing. Like we were at this wedding together. We could have easily just not even talked to each other. But we did. And, it changed my life. So I think people think like, oh, if you like a million, yes, social media is amazing and it's a great way to meet people and stay in touch with people. But just like in your everyday life, you can look up and that next person right next to you could be the person who's going to, present you with an incredible opportunity. You just kind of have to glance up from your phone.
What is this thing you speak of?
I love what you said about, 5 minutes could be a relationship, because I feel like we get so attached to like this idea of forever, and that we hold on to these relationships like they can't change or they can't evolve, and they have to be this like lifelong thing in order for them to be meaningful or impactful in our lives. And when you said that just now, it was like a total mindset shift for me that, really being in the present moment and enjoying the relationship for however long it lasts is infinitely more important than the length of the relationship and really holding on to like making it be something that maybe it's not.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that, when people come into your life, often it's for a reason, or often they're there to show you something or tell you something about yourself. And, maybe they're going to be in your life, forever. Maybe they're going to be in your life for a few years. Maybe it's just you're going to have one interaction with them and, you're never going to see them again. And so in that time, just try to learn as much from them as possible and try to get whatever insights there are from those people. Because I really believe that people come into your life for a reason at any given point, and I tell friends this, even if you're like, madly in love with someone and it didn't work out, you still had that time with them. You still got something from them, and it doesn't have to work out. The objective is not for it to have some sort of nice bow at the end. That experience with them was what you got from it, and nothing can ever take that away from you. Even in the case of a stranger, if you just met them for an hour on a plane or, you don't see them again, you still can get a lot from that time. And then when you do see each other again, it's even more amazing.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I remember reading once, I don't know where I read it, but that there's basically 3 different types of relationships. And the one kind is the fleeting kind, the Starbucks guy, the person in the elevator. And then on the next level, there's the people that come into your life for longer periods of time. They have a bigger lesson for you to learn. And then the third one is the soul relationship, like the partnership or the friends that are in your life for a lifetime. And you have really big stuff to learn from them. But no matter what level of relationship, they are all come into your life exactly for the right reason. Like there is no such thing as coincidence, right? They come in for a very precise reason, and it doesn't matter how long they're in your life for. You have the opportunity to learn from every single person that you come across with. And thank you for having this conversation and for bringing that back into my mind, because I think that that's so true. And oftentimes we get so hooked in having people be in your life longer than necessary. And so if we can imagine that every relationship is like a cloud and some just stay longer, but from everything that comes into your sky is meant to teach you something.
Yeah, and I think that it takes the pressure off, because especially for women, if you're looking for this one soulmate, this one person who's going to complete every part of you, you can ignore all the other people who are also doing that job, maybe in different ways. Like you can have lots of different soulmates. And then if you do find a partner who you want to spend more time with, that's great. But if you don't, then you're still have all these other people filling you up. And I think it takes the pressure off, because then, whoever that person is, it doesn't have to be like a 90% of your objective. It can be 10%, because the 90% is coming from everybody else in your life. And I think that when you do meet people, even in these, I love to use the airplane as an example, because I'm always flying places. And some of those people, yes, sometimes you're going to be stuck between like 2 really obnoxious people who are talking the whole time, but some of those people can be amazing. And this one woman comes to mind. Her name is Rachel. We met on a flight from New York to London, and we were talking. She's this really sweet blonde lady. She was trying to escape this crying baby, so she kind of like ended up in the seat next to me. And it turned out that she had married this Indian man, and I'm half Indian, so her kids were half Indian. So we immediately bonded over this common thing that we had. And we talked the whole time, and then a couple months later, when I was in New York, she messaged me on Instagram saying, "Hey, we should hang out." So we had we had brunch together. It turns out she lives in the same building as Bradley Cooper. We didn't get to see him, but that was awesome. But it's funny because when my boyfriend and I travel together, we never actually sit in the same. We always make it so that we don't sit together.
Wow.
We each get an aisle seat, and usually there's always someone really interesting, sitting next to us. Now, of course, my boyfriend ignores the person sitting next to him, but I am always talking to the person sitting next to me. And the moral of the story is that if you do that, you may get to hang out with Bradley Cooper. So just don't sit next to your boyfriend, on your next flight. Just
amazing. Oh my God, we love you. So it makes total complete sense that we're talking about relationships and communication and connection because Sabrina is a publicist and a pretty damn good one at that. So was it I know you mentioned earlier that it was kind of an accident that she was looking for a publicist and that you didn't know what it was. But once you got into it, was it this concept, this community and connection and telling people's stories? Like, what was it about publicity that really got you hooked?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I never knew what a publicist was. I thought I would be an editor. I love books, I love literature, and I love editing. So I just thought that would be the best fit. And then I was talking to a bunch of editors, and it just didn't seem like it had the human component as much as I wanted. And then again, when I met my future boss, and I was like, "So what's a publicist?" She said, "Well, you just you need to love books because this was a specific book publicity job. Even though now I do all types of publicity, and you need to love people." And really, when I started working in it, I completely fell in love with it because publicity is about promotion, but in the real heart of it, you are trying to take your energy and help someone, build something, and you get to be part of that. So I always say it's like kind of like being like a midwife or a doula. Like you're part of people's babies, and you get to be part of that process, and you get to see them grow, and you get to take what they're doing and pull it out to the world and connect them with other people who are also interested. So it really is all about that kind of connection and community. And, and that's what I really love about it.
So tell us a story of whatever your most challenging and rewarding placement ever was.
Oh my gosh. That is a great question. That is a really excellent question. So I have a good answer for this. One of my former clients, she had written a book about growing up in Christian Science. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's this kind of it's a pseudo religion that sort of that emphasize that doesn't believe in sort of any sort of going to the doctor or anything like that. So my author, she had actually lost her mom to cancer because they didn't believe in treatment. So it was a very sad story, but also a beautiful, uplifting story about her life. And it was called Father, Mother, God. It's a beautiful book. If anyone wants a nice memoir, it was really beautiful, but it was very hard to get media for it because people don't like to talk about religion, and people have like an aversion to religion, and people were like, what is Christian Science? And what can we possibly, people just get a little bit allergic, and anything that's provocative can also, can be inflammatory for media. But I did a lot of research about other stories that had happened, like people who had lost a parent, and I found this woman in Oregon who had gone through a very similar experience. So I contacted the producer at Oregon NPR. Now, if you're familiar with the way, media works, media is very local in many ways. So it's unlikely that a local station in Oregon is going to be talking to this woman from the East Coast, because that's just not what they cover. But we had a lot of communications, and I told her that, there's a story that happened in Oregon, and there's this woman here, she's having a very similar experience. Would you please consider it? And after a lot of back and forth, she finally said, we want to do it. We think there is a connection to what's happening in our town as well. And that was like, that was one of my big first placement victories. And that was a good example of how if you dig deep and you find something that someone can relate to that does make sense for what they're doing and does make sense for their audience, you can get in there. You just need to be persistent and dedicated and committed to what you're trying to say, and to remember what their audience is. So that would probably be up there.
There are so many golden nuggets that I can grab from that story, and let me make sure that I can grab them all. One is what you just said, persistence. The second one is commitment, because that's not the same thing, right? So the fact that I love that you're sharing that with us about the importance of persistence and commitment, because I think a lot of times we get so caught up in having things be immediate, getting the immediate results, that we lose the excitement once we don't get those results, and then we taper off and we stop doing whatever it is that we're doing. So I love that you mentioned that. And then the other one that I love that you said is it's all about relating it to them.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just dropped my pen. And I love that so much, because I think that most of the times when we're entrepreneurs, but I know a lot of people that are listening aren't entrepreneurs, but they still want something from somebody else. I mean, I think that that's the business of being human, is wanting something from somebody else. And I think that what's so powerful about what you said is, in order for you to get what you want from anybody else, it starts with relating to them and making sure that you're connecting to them at a heart level, and then making sure that you are presenting your idea to them in a way that benefits them, that shows them how this idea can actually add to their life or their business or whatever it is that you're pitching. And I love that so much, Sabrina.
Yeah, and I think that way, it's very easy. It's very easy to get disheartened. It's like in this business, as there's a lot of competition, and you can hear the word no a lot, but then it just makes it all the more worthwhile when you finally get that yes. Because what my boss always used to say, you never want to put a square peg in a round hole. There is always an audience for what you're doing. You just have to find that audience, and you have to remember that your audience doesn't have to be what someone else's audience is. Your story doesn't need to be told the same way. That's what makes your story special, because you have things that somebody else doesn't. So you have to highlight those things and find the people who care about that and focus on the essence of what you're doing. Another author I worked with, she's actually based in LA, she wrote a book called The MILF Diet, which was very controversial. The book was actually, the contents of the book was not controversial at all. It was just a lot of fantastic recipes and ideas about how to, get fit. And she's a really brilliant woman. But the title, as you can imagine, was really, really controversial, and people wouldn't touch it again because you can't have expletives when you're on national television. So everyone was like, "Oh, the MILF diet. This must be so scandalous." It wasn't scandalous. It was sort of it was a provocative choice of a title. And one of the places that I got her was on Maine NPR. Now, Maine NPR is like very classy and refined, and and their producer wasn't bothered by the title because she had lived in Maine and she had written a great story, and he kind of found it funny. So some people were like really offended, and some people kind of saw the humor. You just need to be like, okay, not everyone's going to like me, not everyone's going to get what I'm doing. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a bad thing, because the people who do get me, that's where I was supposed to be anyway. It doesn't have to be the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. It could be, a fun upcoming blog that thinks what you're doing is really great. So don't be disheartened if people say no the first time around.
Well, this leads perfectly into another question I had for you in terms of like persistence. And that is, when you get a no, do you ever, like, I don't want to say push back, because it's not like pushing back, but have you ever had a no that you massaged enough that you were able to get them to come to a yes?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have had that. Again, for me, like a no doesn't, it's not a deal breaker. In some cases, what I do is I say, okay, well, if I'm talking to a reporter and I say, great, well, let me know what you're interested in. And if I find someone who is what you want, I will send them to you, because they may have just covered a similar story, or they may be covering something else right now. And so if they don't want that something, maybe something else. And that way, they know that what you're doing is trying to help them.
That's
a reporter knows, you're not just trying to like plug them one story. You're like, okay, well, keep me in, if you're covering a certain beat, then I'll just send something that's up your alley. And there's no better feeling that when there's a reporter who really wants to cover something, is really into something, and then your client, or the person you're representing, they're doing exactly that. It's like playing matchmaker, and you're like, oh my gosh, now they're working on this story together. And, one of my clients, he did this, he developed a technology, a new software system for drumming. It was super specific. Like there are not that many people in the world talking about, I mean, besides the drumming community, it's not like a very wide topic. And there was this reporter at a relatively younger publication who was super into drumming, and that's like all he wants to do. And so he was super excited to get that story, and it was great to be able to give it to him because, you know, he really wanted it and appreciated it. And that's what you want. You want to be able to, you're trying to make everyone's job and life easier, you know, so you want to be able to just give something. So I don't ever get upset when I hear a no, because I'm just like, okay, well, you know, it just means that the yes is coming just from somewhere else.
I love it. I think I read somewhere where you always find a yes in a sea of no's. Where
Exactly.
Yeah, and by that the book meant just keep asking. Maybe not necessarily that person. I don't think the book was referring to that person, but you can, I guess you could say that person. But keep asking, keep putting yourself out there, because somewhere in the land of all the no's that you've been getting, you'll receive a yes. And it's important that you keep going and keep persevering and keep staying, like you said, committed to the ultimate end goal or your result or your vision, and persevere. And so oh my gosh, Sabrina, you're amazing, and I love this topic so much.
Oh, thanks, girls.
Yeah. So, one last question for you is, if somebody is, you know, wanting to build a relationship with somebody else and they want to be of service to them, what do you recommend they do? Like, what is a tip that you found to be super helpful in terms of making sure that connection, whether it's a business connection or not, stays intact and stays really strong?
You know, I think one thing to do is sort of just try to stay in touch with people and kind of stay in touch with what they're doing. And that could just mean, you know, checking in and seeing what they're up to, you know, just a simple message. You know, just don't forget about people, and don't only reach out to them when you need something for them.
Amen.
Yes.
You know, just like stay in touch and, you know, send a card or send a note, and just be plugged into what your friends and colleagues are doing, because then when, you know, you are working on something that could be relevant to them, you are already in touch with what they're doing. You don't have to, you know, you're already in the loop. So that would be my one tip for, you know, sustained relationship building, is like, just don't disappear. Or, you know, even if you disappear for a while, but like, you know, check in occasionally, whether that's, you know, once a month or once a year or however much feels appropriate to what your relationship is, so that, you know, it's much more natural when the opportunity, you know, people will come in and out of your life, and you may have opportunities to collaborate with them at any stage. So just, you know, keep apprised of what everyone around you is up to.
Yeah, and I'll add real quick to that. If you're an entrepreneur, whoever's listening, and you send newsletters out to your people, make sure you're not just sending newsletters when you want something from your people. Make sure that you're reaching out on a consistent basis and giving value to their lives. Because I've seen people who I just receive their newsletter when they want something from me, and it doesn't feel good. It feels yick. And I don't like receiving emails from business contacts like that either. So keep that in mind. If you are connecting with your audience, make sure that you're adding value to their lives, and then they'll get that trust value from you. So when you do ask something, whether you're offering them a service or a product, they'll be much more likely to engage with you.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing to that, which is, you know, share what your friends and colleagues are doing. You know, it is great to be sharing with your community what you're up to, but if you see a friend or a colleague and they did something great, or they got promoted, you know, like, share that too. Like, spread the love, share what your friends are accomplishing just as much as what you're accomplishing.
Thais and I have been doing our best to make that a priority in our lives as well, because it's so important. And especially as we talk about this whole women rising together conversation, which we don't have time to get into today, but it's so important to be supporting one another through the entire process. So, Sabrina, we love you, and it has been such a pleasure having you in LA for, you know, the past 5 months. And we're hoping that you're still working on Jeremy to move here, because we want you here, like, for reals. But thank you. And can you tell everyone where they can find you quick before we wrap?
Sure. You can find me on my website, sabrinadax.com, or on Twitter, Sabrina Dax, or add me on Facebook. LinkedIn, everywhere.
Yay.
Amazing. We will make sure that to add those to the show notes. So if you're listening, you can just go into our show notes and you will have all of Sabrina's contacts so you can connect with her. She's amazing. Go find her. Thank you so much, Sabrina, for your time today.
And
Thanks, ladies.
And as always, you can find us at theamplifycollective.com and on all the social media platforms at The Amplify Co. That's Twitter, Instagram, and newly on Snapchat. So we will see you next week. Thank you for joining us.